She laughed like she knew a secret no one else could touch. I was standing too close to the kitchen counter, pretending to reach for a glass I didn't need, just to watch her. The smell of coffee lingered bitter and warm, curling around her hair like it belonged there. "I shouldn't want this, but I do," she said, almost whispering, and my stomach flipped before I could even process the words. I thought she was talking about the cake she'd baked for my friend's birthday, but the way she looked at me, half smile, half guilty, made it clear she wasn't talking about dessert. I shouldn't be here, in her apartment, leaning against her doorway like a fool. She was older, more experienced. Every movement she made carried a subtle elegance, even when she was fumbling with the coffee filter or wiping crumbs off the counter. But there was a softness to her eyes that caught me off guard. A quiet invitation I wasn't supposed to notice. I shifted my weight, trying to make my hands look natural. They weren't. They were trembling, just slightly. My pulse was in my ears. I told myself it was ridiculous. She was my friend's mother-in-law. She shouldn't be like this. And yet, here she was, brushing her fingers against mine as she handed me a mug, a touch so fleeting it could have been accidental, but I felt it linger in my chest anyway. We were both silent for a moment, and I wanted to say something clever, something that would make her laugh or look at me the way she had in that one fleeting glance. But my voice had gone somewhere else. Instead, I watched her tuck a stray strand of hair behind her ear, and my stomach did that jumpy thing that told me this was dangerous. And maybe that's why I couldn't stop looking. "You're quiet," she said finally, and I realized my lips had parted, words trapped behind some invisible barrier. She leaned slightly against the counter, eyes narrowing like she was studying me, but there was warmth there, too. Like she was deciding whether she could trust me, or whether she should. I laughed awkwardly, scratching the back of my neck. "Yeah. I guess I'm just taking it all in." I wanted to add something about how beautiful she was, about how impossible it felt to be standing here, in her space, feeling something I wasn't supposed to feel. But I didn't. I just kept my gaze on hers, daring myself to linger a second too long. She smiled again, the kind that makes your chest tighten without permission. There was a trace of guilt in it, and maybe a trace of hope. I didn't know which one I wanted more, the guilt or the hope. And then, just as the tension stretched between us like a taut string ready to snap, the doorbell rang. Sharp, insistent. We both froze. Her hand hovered in the air, mine still gripping the mug I hadn't realized I was holding so tightly. Our eyes met, and in that moment, the silence between us carried everything we weren't saying. A small shiver ran down my spine. Someone was coming in. And I had no idea if I was ready for what would happen next. I couldn't stop thinking about the way she had looked at me, that faint, guilty smile lingering like a shadow. She moved with a kind of quiet control I envied. I wondered if she had always been this poised, or if life had forced her to hold herself together while everything else fell apart. I remembered her telling me once, years ago at a barbecue I'd barely attended, that she'd married young, thought she'd have it all figured out by 30, only to watch it unravel slowly. Divorced for almost a decade now, she carried the kind of loneliness that didn't scream. It settled quietly in the corners, in the way she paused before answering a question, in the slight slump of her shoulders when she thought no one was looking. And yet, there was still fire in her. A subtle, dangerous fire. For me, it was different. I was 22, barely out of college, still figuring out who I was. Most days, I felt like a shadow myself, unnoticed, fumbling through other people's expectations. And yet, in her presence, I felt seen. Fully, terrifyingly seen. That alone should have been enough to stop me, but it wasn't. It was risky. I knew it. Her age, the connection to my friend, the whispers of judgment that could follow if anyone found out, we both danced around it silently. The more I tried to suppress it, the more electric the moments felt. My brain knew the rules. My heart ignored them. She had a way of touching my hand casually that made my fingers tingle. A look that lingered just slightly too long. A laugh that seemed meant only for me. I told myself it was harmless, but the tension in the air refused to be ignored. I remembered the day she had confided, almost in passing, that she sometimes regretted putting everyone else's happiness before her own. That she had wanted more, wanted a passion, a connection she never allowed herself to have. Hearing her admit that so casually, as if it was nothing, sent a jolt through me. And then there was the small, unspoken history between us, how I'd always admired her from the edges, how she had caught me staring once and had smiled, knowingly, instead of shaming me. That tiny acknowledgement had rooted something deep inside me, something I wasn't ready to name. The room smelled faintly of vanilla and old books as we sat together on the worn couch, her knee brushing mine. Neither of us said anything for a long moment. I could feel her warmth, the subtle rise and fall of her breath, the faint tremor in her fingers as she adjusted the throw pillow. Finally, she reached over, lightly brushing my hand with hers, almost accidental, almost fleeting. My heart stuttered. Our eyes met, holding a question neither of us dared to speak. The air between us vibrated with everything we were ignoring, the desire, the caution, the guilt, the hope. And yet, in that quiet tension, I felt something solid. A connection I couldn't explain, a tether that pulled me closer without words. For the first time, the rules felt irrelevant, and the risk felt worth it. I hadn't meant to linger in her apartment that evening, but the rain had started, tapping insistently against the windows, and neither of us had mentioned leaving. We sat closer than necessary on the couch, and the warmth of her arm brushing mine sent my chest into a quiet panic. "I shouldn't be feeling this," she murmured, not looking at me. Her fingers fiddled with the edge of her sleeve, twisting it between her hands. "It's wrong." I wanted to tell her I didn't care about wrong. I wanted to tell her I'd waited for this moment longer than I could admit. But I didn't. I swallowed, watching her profile in the dim light, the way her hair caught the glow from the street lamp outside, golden and soft. The door creaked suddenly, and my heart jumped. Not the doorbell this time. Someone inside. My friend's voice called faintly from the hallway. "Hey, are you guys here?" She froze, eyes widening. I felt the panic ripple through her, and instinctively, I moved closer, as if proximity could shield her. She stammered, the words failing her. I ducked slightly, letting my presence fill the space between the sofa and the doorway. My pulse was loud in my ears. Every second stretched, taut and dangerous. When the footsteps receded, I exhaled without realizing it. She finally turned toward me, and our eyes met, tense, weighted, something unspoken hanging between us. "That was close," she whispered. I wanted to reach for her again, to steady her trembling hands against mine. But she pulled back just enough, a hesitation that hurt worse than rejection. Her lips parted like she wanted to say something, but then she swallowed it down. "You can't, we can't," she said finally, almost to herself, shaking her head. Yet the way she lingered near me, brushing past my arm when she stood to close the curtains, was torture. The air smelled of rain and faint perfume, a combination I couldn't forget. I wanted to laugh, to curse, to tell her I'd follow her anywhere. Instead, I sat still, my hands gripping the edge of the couch, trying to anchor myself. My chest ached with the tension of wanting, knowing it was dangerous, and still not wanting to move away. She glanced at me once more, and in that moment I saw the truth. Fear, yes, but also desire, a spark she hadn't meant to show anyone. My stomach twisted with the knowledge that I wasn't the only one fighting it. Then her phone buzzed. She picked it up, her fingers trembling slightly as she read the message. A subtle shift in her posture, the tightening of her jaw. I wanted to ask, but I didn't. The moment felt too fragile, too volatile. She set the phone down without a word. Silence fell again, heavier this time, layered with rain, heartbeats, and what we weren't saying. I could almost touch the tension between us, electric and unyielding, pulling me closer even as I knew I should step back. And as her gaze lingered on mine, uncertain, forbidden, something impossible hovered in the air. One step, one word, and everything could change. I caught her looking at her reflection in the hallway mirror, brushing a hand through her hair, and something inside me twisted. Not anger exactly, but a tight, gnawing ache I couldn't name. I realized, with sudden clarity, that I didn't like the thought of her being admired by anyone else. Her laugh drifted from the living room as my friend, made some joke I didn't catch. I felt a surge of jealousy that hit me like a wave, sharp and bitter. It wasn't fair. I hadn't earned the right to feel this, yet I couldn't stop it. She turned, catching the tension in my posture, and her brow furrowed slightly. "You look upset," she said softly, taking a cautious step toward me. Her voice, gentle as it was, made my chest ache all over again. "I'm fine," I said too quickly. My hands were clenching, unclenching. My pulse pounded in my throat. I wasn't fine. Not with her laughing at someone else's joke, not with the way her eyes lit up in ways they hadn't for me yet. She hesitated, hovering a breath away from me, and I could feel her warmth, that subtle curve of her shoulder just inches from my chest. My mind screamed at me to pull away, to respect boundaries, to stay rational. But my body, it had its own language, one I couldn't control. "You're not fine," she said, almost a whisper. Her gaze locked with mine, unflinching. There was something raw there, desire, fear, longing, and I felt my stomach drop. I took a step closer, and she didn't move back. One more step, and she brushed against my arm, deliberately this time, a touch that sent sparks up my spine. My fingers twitched, aching to linger on her hand, her wrist, anywhere. Why are we doing this?" she murmured, voice tight. "Why can't we stop?" Her words hit me harder than anything. Because I didn't want to stop. I wanted this, her. Every cautious glance, every fleeting touch, had built to this impossible tension. My heart thundered as I tried to form words, but nothing came. We were so close now that I could smell her, warm vanilla, faint perfume, and it made my head spin. Everything I had told myself, every rule, every warning, was gone. Her hand hovered near mine, not quite touching, and the room felt unbearably small. Outside, the rain pounded the windows, relentless, like a countdown ticking just for us. "I can't," she whispered, and the tremor in her voice betrayed her. She was lying, or maybe we both were, lying to ourselves because admitting the truth would change everything. I reached, just a fraction, for her fingers. She froze, eyes wide, and in that heartbeat the world stopped. All the hesitations, all the risks, all the unspoken desires were concentrated in that one fragile, electric moment. And then, footsteps echoed from the hallway again. Someone was coming. We jerked slightly apart, a tension snap that left my chest aching and my mind spinning. The air between us was thick, dangerous, full of everything we hadn't said. And in that instant I knew one move, one word, and nothing would ever be the same. The sound of the doorknob rattling made my heart jump. We had frozen, eyes wide, as her phone buzzed again, insistent this time. But it wasn't a message, someone was at the door. And then I heard it, the sharp, familiar voice of my friend, laughing as if nothing had changed. I felt the color drain from her face. She stepped back, pressing a hand to her mouth. No, it's not what it looks like," she said, almost to herself. "What?" I whispered, panic lacing my voice. She shook her head, but her lips quivered. He called. Said he'd stop by early. I didn't think it would matter." My chest tightened. My friend's presence meant boundaries, rules, consequences. Everything that had felt private, intimate, electric, suddenly risked exposure. "I should go," I said, my voice barely steady. But she shook her head. "No, stay. Just stay." She didn't explain why, but the plea in her eyes stopped me. We stood there, the rain outside hammering against the windows, the world shrinking to the space between us. I could see her jaw tighten, her fingers flexing against her sides, the way she tried to look composed while chaos waited at the door. Then she glanced down at her phone, a message from him glaring on the screen. "Be home soon. Don't forget the plan." Her breath itched, and I realized with a jolt that she hadn't just been caught off guard, she'd been hiding something. Not from me, exactly, but from herself. Her life, her decisions, her past, they weren't as simple as I thought. Your plan? I asked carefully, trying to read between the lines without pushing too hard. Her eyes met mine, sharp and fleeting. It's complicated, she said. I can't explain right now. But I didn't need her to explain. The tension, the hesitation, the almost touch that had brought me here, it was all charged with more than just desire. Secrets, obligations, responsibilities, everything I hadn't seen until now. My stomach twisted. I wanted to run my hand along her arm, to pull her close, to insist that none of it mattered. But I knew better. She was a storm I couldn't control, and I wasn't sure I wanted to. I need to know, I said finally, voice low. Can we? She looked away, and for a moment I thought she'd leave the room entirely. Then she turned back, her eyes glimmering with the kind of raw honesty that left me breathless. I want to, but I can't. Not yet. You don't understand. There are things you don't know. Her words hit me like cold water. Desire, fear, and longing twisted into something sharper, something impossible to ignore. The room seemed smaller, tighter, and my pulse raced with the knowledge that the rules had changed. And just as I opened my mouth to press her for the truth, the door creaked again, louder this time. My friend was here. We froze. The fragile bubble between us shattered. Every fleeting look, every unspoken word, every near touch, exposed. And in that silence, we both knew that nothing could stay the same after this night. The door clicked shut behind my friend, and for a moment, the apartment felt impossibly quiet. Rain still drummed against the windows, but inside, everything had stopped except the two of us. She turned to me, shoulders tense, eyes wide. I could see the storm in her gaze, fear, longing, guilt, hope, all tangled together like a knot neither of us could untie. I can't keep pretending, I said, voice raw. I've tried. I've tried to ignore it, to step back, to respect everything. But I can't. Her lips parted slightly, and I saw the same mixture mirrored there. She swallowed, a shiver running through her. You don't understand. It's not just us. There are people depending on me, on the life I've built. I can't throw it all away, but... Her voice faltered. But I want this too. I took a cautious step closer, feeling the weight of every stolen glance, every brushed hand, every near kiss we'd shared. Then let's stop pretending it's impossible, I said softly. Let's at least acknowledge it. Right now. Here. Whatever happens next, we deal with it after. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. She looked down, then back at me, and in that instant she made a choice. She didn't speak, didn't explain, didn't apologize. She just stepped closer, and the air between us vibrated with everything we hadn't said. Her hand found mine, slow, deliberate. Not accidental. My fingers twined with hers, gripping gently, trembling with the weight of it. My heart hammered in my chest as our eyes locked, and I saw it all there, the desire, the hesitation, the impossibility, and the undeniable pull between us. She started, voice barely audible. Then she stopped, shaking her head, letting the moment stretch, letting the silence carry what words couldn't. I didn't need her to finish. I understood. Every touch, every glance, every pause had spoken louder than any confession. We were crossing a line we couldn't take back, but for the first time, I didn't care. Her other hand lifted to my cheek, warm and tentative, and I leaned into it instinctively, closing the distance that had haunted us for months. My breath caught. She paused, inches from my lips, and I could feel the electric tension, the fragile edge of everything we were risking. And then, just as the world seemed to narrow down to that one heartbeat, the phone buzzed again, insistent, sharp, unavoidable. We froze, fingers still tangled, breath mingling, the rain outside pounding like a countdown. A choice had been made, yes, but the next step, the real step, hung in the air, uncertain and terrifying. Her eyes searched mine, questioning, daring, pleading, and in that suspended second, I realized that no matter what came next, we had crossed a point of no return. And I knew one thing for certain: nothing would ever be the same again. Morning came slow, filtered through rain-streaked windows. The apartment smelled faintly of coffee and yesterday's tension, lingering like a memory either of us could shake. We sat on the couch, side by side, hands still brushing occasionally, either of us speaking. Words felt unnecessary. Every glance, every small touch carried the weight of what had shifted between us. "I can't promise the world," she said finally, voice low, almost shy. "I can't fix everything, or make things easy." I shook my head, letting a small smile curve my lips. "I don't need easy. I just want this. You. Us. Somehow, we'll figure the rest out." Her eyes softened, and for a moment the fear, the guilt, and the impossible stakes melted into something simple, human. Two people who had waited too long to admit what they wanted, finally allowing themselves a chance. We talked quietly after that, half-whispered confessions and shared memories, brushing over the moments that had almost destroyed us and laughing at the ridiculousness of our own caution. There was still risk, yes, but it felt bearable because we weren't alone anymore. She reached over, brushing my fingers with hers, lingering just enough for my pulse to spike. "I've waited for so long," she admitted, a tremor in her voice. I didn't think I'd ever feel seen like this." I felt my chest tighten. "And I've waited to feel this. Felt it from a distance, afraid to act. But seeing you now, here, it's everything I've been waiting for." We didn't rush, didn't pretend the world outside didn't exist. But the tension that had haunted us, the forbidden allure, the impossible stakes, they had transformed into something real. Something that could survive, even if the path ahead was uncertain. Hours passed quietly. Rain softened, light brightened the room, and we stayed like that, present, tangled in each other's presence. I realized then that love didn't always arrive with fireworks or perfection. Sometimes it came slow, messy, a little dangerous, but unforgettable. And as she rested her head lightly against my shoulder, I knew we had crossed the line into something irreversible. A beginning disguised as a fragile peace. The future wasn't guaranteed, but in that moment, it didn't matter. What mattered was this: us here, alive in the possibility of what we could become. I didn't need to say more. Her hand in mine, her breath brushing against my cheek, and the quiet smiles we exchanged said everything we couldn't put into words. And yet, even as we settled into that fragile happiness, a question lingered unspoken: what would happen when the rest of the world caught up with us? Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?